Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Ephesians, the second chapter. And you have he quickened, right? As Paul continues his message here. So he's referring here to the believers. And he says here, you have he quickened. Quickened is another way of saying to make alive. Sometimes you'll see a scripture that says he judges both the quick and the dead. The quick means those that are alive. Dead means those that are dead. So here he's saying the Lord quickened, or he made you alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins. Now, this is not literal death, because they were, alive back when they were practicing, wicked deeds out of ignorance. And it's the same life when they heard the gospel and started to believe. So what does it mean they were dead in trespasses and sins? Meaning that they were living in a dead state, spiritually, that is, right? And a quick precept for that. Let's go real quick to the book of Proverbs, chapter 21 and 16. So it says here, the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. So if somebody, because there are a lot of people today that they're alive, they don't have understanding though. So what does it mean by the congregation of the dead? It's likened unto those that are without the spiritual understanding of this knowledge that makes you alive. So before the Lord, to an extent, they're likened unto being dead. So Paul is saying here, you at one point, you were dead spiritually to the Lord, because you were living a life of sin and wickedness, but he made you alive by having this gospel being preached unto you and you believing it. Wherein in time past ye walked according to the course of this world. And let's go into that word course. But he's saying here, you had a lot of Israelite foreigners in this region that became believers. And before hearing the word and believing, they were living like Gentiles. They were living like heathens. They weren't following the ways of the Lord. So the course, it says the age, right? The period of time, perpetuity of time. So the things that their time period subjected them to do, right? Like, for example, living according to the standard of the world back then would look a little different than living according to the standard of the world now, right? Yeah, they may have been eating abominable foods. They may have been sodomites, right? They may have been committing adultery. And those same things go on today, except today, when you live according to the ways of the world, you now have TGs, right? You now have, to the extent that you do now, certain practices that are still after the ways of the world, but it just looks slightly different because times change, right? But long story short, Paul is saying here, at one point in time, you weren't living according to the ways of the Lord. Shit, a lot of you weren't even living according to the ways of your heritage, right? Going back to a main period of time was the Hellenization period, right? Where under the Greek rulership, primarily Antiochus Epiphanes, a lot of Israelites fell or left off their customs and heritage of being Israelites. And over time, they lost the knowledge of that, practiced the way of the Greeks. They even moved from the land or living in different areas. And so in generation after generation, it gets to the point where they start to believe that they are of the people that they're amongst, when really they're Israelites that didn't even know that they were Israelites. But long story short, as Paul is saying here, you lived according to the way of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, right, which is Satan, which has dominion up until Yahushua takes over, right? Satan still has dominion. That's why his demons still run rampant, right? They're still influencing the children of this world. And as the Apostle Paul mentions here, the children of disobedience. Okay, so according to the prince of the power of the air, according to the influence of Satan, which is spread throughout the world to try and catch. Remember, in the scriptures, it tells you, Satan says he walketh about to and fro, in the earth. The scriptures tell you that he's looking for who he can devour. How does he devour you? Via the influence of the world that he has influence over, or he has power and control over. So it says the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. And the children of disobedience are the unbelievers, right? Those that didn't believe. And that spirit that was working in them, that blinded them, was through the left-hand side. So Paul is saying at one point you were like that. And hey, even us now in this day and age, at one point we were like that. We were walking according to the course of this world. We were likened unto children of disobedience, among whom also we all had our conversation. The word conversation here goes back to the Greek anastrophe or anastraphal, which here Paul's using it in the metaphorical sense, meaning here to conduct oneself, to behave oneself, to live. So your manner of life or your conduct of life is what he's referring to. So what Paul is saying here is, yes, at one point, all of us in the way we used to live, right, in times past was after the course of this world, in the lusts of our flesh, the things that we didn't have anything guiding us other than our desires on what to do, what we thought was right and what we thought was wrong and what we wanted to do. We weren't disciplined by the Spirit, right, to say, don't do this because of this. Don't do, no. So we were led by the lusts of our flesh, the desires of our minds, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, right? You did what you wanted to do. In the truth, or, under the having on the mind of Yahushua and following the law of the Spirit, you don't always get to do what you want to do, right? And what I mean is what your flesh wants to do. You do what the Spirit of the Lord instructs you to do. And we're by nature the children of wrath. See, so inherently, or by nature, without correction, as we were following the lusts of our flesh, we were the children of wrath, meaning we were living like those that incur the wrath of the Lord through our disobedience, even as others, right? Even as those that are unbelievers, they live like that. But God, who is rich in mercy, so his mercy is abundant, for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Hamashiach. So through the abundance of mercy the Lord has, and the great love that he has loved us, even while we were dead in sins, while we were consumed in the wicked lifestyle of our past selves, he took us from that and made us alive together with Yahushua. By grace ye are saved. See, so the Lord had grace, or was gracious to us to say, yes, you're still in your sins. You're pretty much dead to me, right? Like if somebody says you're dead to me, usually it's not because you just did something really, really good for them. You're not going to give somebody $1 million or buy somebody a new car or like save their life and they yell at you and say, you're dead to me. It's usually the opposite. You do something that they don't like, something that really angers them. And when they tell you you're dead to them, you don't just drop down and actually die. But what it means is that you are to them as if you don't exist, as if you actually died. Kind of like they've cut ties with you. So we were dead to the Lord when we were living in sin. But seeing us in that state, he loved us so much that he made us alive onto him again by, forgiving us our sins through belief in Yahushua. He said, look, if I leave these people, they're going to continue to remain dead in their sins until they actually die. So I'm going to give them the gift of faith. And that's going to trigger something within them to want to come to life, to want to believe the truth. And through that belief and that faith, they can be made alive again, because they'll start to follow the ways of life. They'll do the things that are pleasing to me. That was by grace. So our salvation, us being saved, us being made alive again, was by the grace of the Lord. And hath raised up us together and made us sit together in heavenly places in Hamashiach Yahushai. So the Lord has raised us up, made us alive together with Yahushai. So when we came to believe on the Lord, the first thing that happened is the old man, the old way we were when we first came to believe in the Lord, just like them, was likened onto being put to death with Yahushua on the cross. And just as Yahushua was raised up, right, onto life, we also get the newness of life. It's like getting a respawn. So the Lord raised us up together and made us sit in heavenly places in Yahushua HaMashiach, right? Because right now, and even once again during the Apostle Paul's time, the world didn't see us as in any high places, right? We were actually quite the opposite. But in the spirit, in actuality, and in the world to come, the Lord has really given us high positions through belief in Yahushua. Because if Yahushua is going to be the king of the next world and it's going to be his kingdom, what are we going to be that have suffered with him who will be joint heirs with him? We're going to be in high positions. We're going to be in heavenly places. We're going to have authority. That in the ages to come, he might shew the exceeding riches or the abundance of his grace in his kindness toward us through Yahushua HaMashiach. So the Lord has put us in these heavenly places so that in the ages to come, we will be used like as an example that shows or exemplifies how kind and gracious the Lord is towards us through Yahushua. For by grace are ye saved through faith. So it starts with the grace that the Lord, bestowed upon us, the opportunity that we didn't really deserve. And given that grace, we still have to have faith. Okay. Grace is like the Lord opening your eyes to see the door. Faith is you actually have to go and walk through the door. You've been given the opportunity that you didn't deserve, but now you have to take it. And that's through faith. And that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. See, so you don't give yourself faith. You don't decide whether you're going to have faith or not. That's a gift the Lord gives you. Not of works, lest any man should boast. See? So you can't boast in yourself as though you are the one, who got all these things, because it's not about how great you were at following the laws. It's not about anything you actually did, but rather the Lord just gave it to you as a gift. So you can't boast. It's like somebody dishing you a brand new car. That's different than if you like worked. Let's say you were in the projects and then you worked really hard. You got a good job, you hustled, you saved up, and then you bought that brand new car. And then when people compliment you or they see you in that car, you can tell them, yeah, this is a result of my hard work. I stayed up, I lost sleep for this, I was grinding day and night for this. You're able to boast because that car was from your hard work. But if it's a gift that somebody gave you, how can you boast in that? So likewise, faith is a gift, right? We can't go around and boast because the Lord didn't give it to us because of any works that we did. For we are his workmanship, right? So we are the creation. We are the, the product of the Lord's work, created in Hamashiach Yahushai onto good works. So if Yahushai is the factory, then we are the products that come out of that factory. But those products cannot be made except within that factory. And those products are to good works. So we are the work, the results of the Lord's work in Yahushai onto good works, right? Onto following and serving and preaching and doing that which is favorable in the eyes of the Lord, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. See, the good works that the Lord has set beforehand and also set us beforehand to believe in Yahushai. That is the way we're supposed to live. Verse 11. Wherefore remember that ye, being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, what that means is keep in mind that you at one point, being a Gentile in the flesh, just means that one, the things you were doing and the way you were living, like carnally in your actual flesh, were after the manner of the Gentiles. So one example is being uncircumcised. That is something that is, if you are an Israelite, but you're not knowledgeable of that, you're going to be born and you're going to be left uncircumcised. That's a custom of the Gentiles, but it's a way of life that you partook in, not knowing any better, eating foods of the Gentiles, getting tattoos, doing the things that they do. Majority of these things are of the flesh. They're in the flesh. The things you eat is centered around your flesh. If you get markings on your body, it's centered around your flesh. If you're not circumcised, it's centered around your flesh. If you commit adultery, it's centered around your flesh. So these were things that the Gentiles do that Paul is saying here, you used to do that. Who are called uncircumcision, right? So they're the Gentiles are called uncircumcision, yes, because they are uncircumcised, but also mainly because that's like a symbolic of them being unclean, right? Or profane or without the ways that the Lord had given us by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made with hands. So those that are called the circumcision are the Israelites, the Jews that were raised with the knowledge of being Israelites, went to the synagogue, kept the customs, were circumcised in the flesh, right? Actually physically circumcised. And so they were calling the other Israelites uncircumcised, right? Uncircumcision, because they were living like the uncircumcision. But at that time, ye were without Hamashiach. So you at that time didn't know about the Lord. You didn't even know, majority of you didn't even know you were Israelites, but you didn't know about the Lord, right? You were living without Yahweh Shai, being aliens, so outsider, outcasts from the commonwealth of Israel. So by inheritance, by bloodline, you had right to the commonwealth of Israel, but being that you didn't even know you were Israelites and you didn't have a way back to that, being without Yahweh Shai, because Yahweh Shai was your way through, to that, not in works, but in faith. So Paul is saying here, at one point you were without Yahweh Shai, which um, made you or had you stay as outcasts to the commonwealth of Israel. So the things that that pertain to Israel, you weren't getting the benefit of, and strangers from the covenants of promise, right? So the covenants the that would result in the promises of the Lord being given to us, having no hope and without God in the world. That's how you used to live. But now in Hamashiach Yahushai, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh, meaning you're brought near, you're made close by the blood of Hamashiach. So think of Yahushai like if you were on an island and you were surrounded by water, which is what these Israelite foreigners were likened onto, and you can't get to the mainland, which is where the circumcision were. Think of Yahushai as, and I'll smoothen up that example a bit more after this, but think of Yahushai as like a bridge on water that allows you to cross from that island you're on to the mainland. Except the mainland is not um, it's not just, for example, keeping the laws or knowing you're an Israelite. That's part of it, but it's really truly serving the Lord the correct way, right? So maybe let me better the example a bit more. Your Yahushua is a bridge to the mainland, but the destination is the sanctuary within the mainland. So on the mainland, people there are circumcised, they keep the laws, they know they're Israelites. But even on the mainland, only a few of them make it to the actual sanctuary, which is the Israel of God, where you serve the Lord in spirit and in truth, how he wants to be served. So guess what? You as an Israelite foreigner, you have to first cross that bridge to get to the mainland, and then you got to go to the sanctuary, which is on the mainland, right? Those that are of the circumcision, they're already on the mainland, but they still have to go to the sanctuary. They may have a shorter trip, but they still have to go there, and not everybody can make it there. Hopefully, that example is not too confusing. Verse. So it says, by the blood of Mashiach. So by his sacrifice, you have a way to the sanctuary, to back to being joined to the Father. He is our peace, who hath made both one, and hath broken down the middle wall of partition. See, So the Lord is our peace, and he hath made both one. Because guess what? You had once again, the Israelites that were called the uncircumcision, and you had those that were of the circumcision. And Yahushua, like I said, if these are like two Venn diagrams, Yahushua is the middle part, the overlap, right? To where whether you grew up not knowing you're an Israelite or you grew up knowing you're an Israelite, you're both one in Yahushua, and have broken down the middle wall of partition between us, right? The separation, the gap that was, you know, that water, going back to my example, right? That body of water that was keeping that island separate from the mainland. Yahushua bridged that. Okay. Well, he broke that wall. So now there is a joining, a unifying of Israelites, foreigners, and Israelites that knew they were Israelites, but it's in Yahushua. Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain one new man, so making peace. Right. So Yahushua abolished in his flesh through his sacrifice that he was, okay, or the sacrifice that he did, the enmity, okay, which was that division, the separation, okay. One second, let me just put this on here. There you go. And it mentions here the law of the commandments contained in ordinances, okay, which really what that comes down to is the external regulations, right, that governed daily life. So things like circumcision, ritual, being pure, purity rituals, right, access to the temple, like these ordinances separated the circumcision from the Israelite foreigners, and it prevented a shared fellowship. So Yahushai broke down that division, what was keeping them separate, one from looking at the other as different. Okay, but as he says here, to make in himself of twain of two one new man. So you're no longer, oh, I'm under the works of the law only, and oh, I'm completely estrayed from the inheritance or the commonwealth as uncircumcision, but rather both of you are now believers in Yahushai. That's one. That's new. That's your new identity. You're believers in Yahushai. Okay, so making peace. So he bridged that gap. Verse 16, and that he might reconcile, to bring together both unto God in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby. See, so the Lord first bridged the gap between Israel, the foreigners, and those of the circumcision, and then having unified them or united them into one body, which is himself, he could then present that to the Lord, saying, here, Lord, this is your final product. Okay. And came and preached peace to you, which were afar off, and to them that were nigh. And how did he do that? By sending the apostles, right? Sending Paul, and not just Paul, right? He also had some of the other apostles, but he sent his messengers and his servants to preach the word, to preach him to those that were afar off and to those that were near. For through him we both have access by one Spirit unto the Father. See, whether you are an Israelite foreigner or you're one of the circumcision, it's still one Spirit, still the same Spirit that you have to use to get to the Father. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints. See, so through Yahushua, through believing in him, you have been joined, right? Your fellow citizens. You're you're back to that commonwealth that was really yours to begin with as well, but you fell from it. And of the household of God. You hear that? So we are all of the family of God, regardless of where we were when the Lord found us, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yahushua himself being the chief cornerstone. So it started with Yahushua being the chief cornerstone. And then after laying that down, as you continue to build, because who did he first teach? Those that became apostles, which were the foundation, the structural pieces of the building. And then after that, each of those that would hear and believe on after that are likened on to the bricks that are being, put on to build that building, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth onto an temple on was it? Yeah, onto an holy temple in the Lord. Right. So in Yahushai, each piece, each brick fits perfectly together to the completion of the temple of the Lord, right, which is the body of the elect, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. So I think in Revelation it mentions that the Lord is going to dwell amongst us, right? Spirit is going to dwell in us. But once that building is complete, okay, the Lord is going to come and dwell there, which signifies the Spirit of the Lord dwelling with us. And that brings us to the end of the book of Ephesians, the second chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.